So, hi all. The topic for today is increasing delivery success by reducing Fox Agile. So, to set the expectations right, this is not a one-shot solution. It's not going to provide you with an immediate success. It is just an attempt on our side to talk about the most frequent challenges that we see when we are doing an RPA implementation, and just raise some questions or give some suggestions around what those potential solutions could be, or what could be some of the questions that you can ask your teams so that the overall implementation is more smooth. So let me just begin. Okay, so first of all, who am I? My name is Nihar Goyal. I'm working as a robotics project manager with Automation Anywhere, and that's just a little picture of me. Uh, on the professional side, I have a deep experience into quality. I like to enable teams so that they can work better. And I'm a curious learner. I like to do certifications. I like to know more about the best practices or the good practices that are prevalent in the industry today. And I just take that and try to implement that in my own organization or my own work culture. So that's me. On the personal front, I am a pet parent and an experimentalist. I like to try new things. You can see a picture of my dog there. That's Max, and he's adorable. You can reach me at nihargoyal@gmail.com, and I have pasted my LinkedIn ID, and we can get in touch later if there is anything else. So without delaying this any further, let's dive deep into this. So what's our agenda for today? So we are going to look at some software bots at work. We will understand what RPA means, how it is different from traditional automation practices. And my apologies, I just lost electricity. You may see, okay, it's back. Okay, so organizational benefits that RPA brings to the table, delivery challenges, what do we mean by Fox Agile, or as Disciplined Agile quotes, Agile in name only, what Disciplined Agile is, and then we can go to the Q&A. So let's begin by, oh, and before we forget, there is one PDU that you can achieve by completing this webinar. The PDU code will be shared at the end. I'll paste that in the chat and you can just collect it from there. So let's begin by watching a small video of what RPA actually is. I'll just play this. It's a short 2-minute video. Okay, so that was the end of it. I am not sure about you, but I always love how the bots replace the word you with bots in that video. So what is RPA? What did we just see? So simply put, uh, RPA is a software technology that lets us or enables us to create more value. It will free your manual workforce so that they can focus on better things and they can be more productive at work. So we can build software robots or bots which can learn, mimic, and execute rule-based processes seamlessly, and it can work 24/7 so that it can enable your businesses to scale much faster. So we just saw some examples just to list them down here. We can do a lot of activities, we can do calculations, we can have decision making built in the process. We can even extract unstructured data and so on. But then how does this differ from the traditional automation that we normally see? So this is something that comes up a lot. And then let's just talk about that a little bit. Let me just fix this. Okay. So in essence, RPA extends the traditional automation. It provides better capability. It is more intuitive. So it has an easy to use interface that can enable the business users to build their own bots. So what does that mean, right? So this empowers the workforce to automate on their own and in real time so that they can build solutions and realize faster return on investments. This also paves a way for bigger implementations as teams are already aware of the platform and hopefully are in favor of it. It is also scalable. Oops, I just skipped it. Okay. So it is also scalable. So what that means is in case you belong to an industry which sees a lot of processing during peak seasons, it can be a lifesaver. So it can enable you to scale according to your needs seamlessly, and it can be done by anybody. It's that simple. And finally, it's more intelligent. So RPA can handle even complex, unstructured information by adding artificial intelligence to it. So with inbuilt integrations with a lot of OCR engines, the information can be extracted from PDFs or images, and they can be digital, scanned, or even handwritten, and the same information can then be fed for an end-to-end processing. So that's RPA for you, which is over the traditional automation. Now, talking about the benefits, as we rightly discussed, it increases your productivity because the workflows get accelerated, and we are basically enabling independent process execution. So you don't have to sit and do tasks. So in industries like finance or insurance, which are document heavy, the bots can do the form filling for you. They can process the claims, and it's all hands free. So you don't have to worry about it. They are more accurate, so they can perform the same task over and over again, and there is no rework and a near perfect compliance in the way they work. So we can have new speeds by which we can process order to cash or procure to pay processes. We can have integrations with the rest of the enterprise. So the days where teams used to work in silos, that can be eliminated. We can have a more holistic approach to our solutions. We can save costs. So I think that is one benefit that is always highlighted. So users can quickly master the RPA bots. They can create their own robots. They can start driving ROI and save up to 40% of their time, which was previously invested into data heavy processes. Now, because of this faster response time, the customers can have a better experience because they are getting better SLAs out of it. On the other hand, the employees can have better engagement and a better morale to work. So because they are able to focus on value added tasks. Next in, we have the intelligence that can be built into these bots so that they can even process the 80% of the unstructured data that lies within an organization. And you don't really have to invest resources into changing the formats of those data. They can be used as is. And finally, it is scalable. So high volume business processes, they can become more elastic and adapt to the uncertain times and changing needs. And to top this off, it's intuitive and anybody can do it. So that's the advantage for the organization when we implement the RPA. So that is just what we're talking about here. It solves problems, it improves your processes, you can conduct analysis, perform value-added work, and have a better employee engagement and a new revenue opportunity that can be created through this. Now, speaking of all this, does it mean that it's so simple to use that you can reap the benefits immediately? Now, that is a message that most of us get out of it, but that is not the case. So RPA has its own delivery challenges. It is not really free from the implementation issues that we see with the rest of the deliveries that we do. So what goes wrong? So first off, like any disruptive technology, the true meaning of RPA can get lost in the glitz and glamour. So many of us are eager to hop on this bandwagon to implement or digitize our entire workforce or to do everything in an automated manner. But then it has to align with the organization goals or direction. If that is not the case, we are going to see major disconnects later on, and we will not be able to reap the benefits that RPA provides. Another challenge that lies with RPA is the process selection. So it may seem attractive to pick the low-hanging fruits first when we talk about RPA implementations. But if there is little value that is added through those processes, it becomes very difficult to project the right benefits to the wider teams. So that would drive down your adoptions. On the flip side, and we face this with a lot of customers, uh, selecting something which is very complex just because it's a major pain point for execution or governance or for the teams at the moment, the RPA implementation could actually fall flat because you would not really know how to go about it. You would not really be able to take up such a complex task as the first one. So this could actually lead to future resistance for similar initiatives that are taken up by the teams. Now, you could actually be free from these two challenges, but then what about collaboration? So Agile talks a lot about having a collaborated delivery, but how much of it is actually true? How much of it actually gets done at the ground level? So an RPA bot will actually learn and mimic the human behavior. So any gaps which are there in the build will almost always lead to a heartache later. So an effective collaboration is the key. You need to have all the people on board. They have to understand what value it's bringing, and they have to be in sync all the time so that the bots can actually learn better and they can perform the tasks that they're supposed to do. Another thing that we see is lack of documentation. Now, Agile promotes, working software over comprehensive documentation. That is one of the key messages that we see. But this is probably an exit clause for many teams, right? So while smaller implementations might not benefit from comprehensive documentation, it could actually be counterproductive. There is always a need to do sufficient documentation. That is very crucial when it comes to RPA as well. Now, another thing that happens at a lot of organizations is a siloed implementation when we deliver any project. So while most of us are working in a Scrum fashion, Agile isn't just about producing user stories or tasks at the end of every 2 weeks. Whatever we do, there has to be a meaning to that work, and it has to align with the business problems. So it becomes very crucial that we understand the difference between Agile and a sugar-coated traditional methodology or a traditional model. So it is very easy for teams to simply label or change some labels for a waterfall methodology and just term that as agile. But in that case, it is just a broken process and it will produce a lot of waste later on, which will give rise to a lot of problems in terms of maintenance as well. And talking about that, at the spirit of it, the maintenance overhead. So all these factors combined, if the overall implementation has not been done with the right vision and the right support, the teams will look as if they are struggling all the time, they are fixing things all the time. They will not be able to reap the true benefit of RPA. There will not be any ROI, and the employees are going to be frustrated since they will have to work on two fronts. They will have to attend to their manual tasks as well as sort this mess that we have created through RPA. So, like we are saying it here, the RPA will transform business, but it's not a given. There is a right way to implement RPA. RPA adoption is a long-term journey of creating change, which is operational as well as cultural, that will empower your workforce to be more productive and more creative. That is our end goal, but then it has to be done right. So let's just look at one example of what usually happens in a workplace. So agile in name only. What is Fox Agile? So today, agile has become a buzzword. Everybody seems to be doing it. Everybody wants to be agile. And I think most of us link agile with Scrum. Sorry, I'm facing some issue with my camera. Okay. So while most of the organizations adopt agile, only a few are considered to be performing with a high agility. Now, what does this mean? So in a normal scenario, this is what it looks like. We have marketing, we have pre-sales, sales, planning, analysis, coding, testing, and deployment. These are most of the phases, or at a high level, the major phases that any implementation will go through, including RPA. Now, what happens on the engagement side of it? Marketing, pre-sales, and sales, a customer would be heavily involved. They would be uh, included in all the meetings. They would look at everything. But then when we come to the implementation part of it, it falls down to partial involvement. Now, when we talk about agile, coding is where we say that we are agile. So we are synonymous with the thought that if we are producing output in 2 weeks, in every 2 weeks, and we are showing that to the customer, we are agile. But no, that's not the case. So what are the other roadblocks? So we have inadequate experience. That is one. We try to be agile, but we don't know how to do that. There is a lack of organizational change. So our team could be agile. We could be working in an agile manner when it comes to the delivery part of it. But then what about the rest of it? What about integrations? What about other teams? What about product issues? Unless we have that agility across, it's very tough to do this in silos. There is a fear of failure because the team members don't feel safe enough, and they would not really experiment to find better ways of doing things. They will just stick to what they know. Even if it makes sense or not, they will continue to do that. adopting the best practices. Now, this is something that I consider myself guilty of as well. It is kind of a silver bullet that we think would work for every project, but that never happens. We have to adapt to what the situations are, and we have to adjust our practices accordingly. And finally, doing agile before being agile, because agile is a mindset. And unless you have that mindset, it doesn't really make sense to just pick the practices which are there in the market and try to implement those in your teams. It will mostly always fail. So coming to disciplined agile, how is this helpful? What does it bring in terms of value over the traditional agile that we talk about, right? So before we actually dive into this, I don't think of disciplined agile as something different. So it is probably like different people have done a different thing, a lot of things or different things in their implementations or projects. And when we talk about disciplined agile, it's like all those people have gathered together and they're working on a single delivery. So we have multiple perspectives, we have multiple contexts, and we have the freedom to choose what works best in our scenario. So that is what I consider disciplined agile to be. It is a toolkit, and like the quote says, it is better to have and not need than to need and not have. So it's always good to have those experiences and contexts with us, which can help us in succeeding faster and avoid some experimentation that we know could go wrong. So what is this all about? So disciplined agile is a combination of life cycles. So it is not just uh, agile, I would say. It will also have lean. It also have exploratory cycles. It also have a program cycle. It even supports traditional cycles to some extent, traditional methodologies. It is goal driven. So there are a lot of things that you have to resolve, and you can actually go in and see what would work best in your scenario, and you can choose that. And it has a lot of practices and options, which has some trade-offs, which can be seen early on, and you can learn from the experience of others who have worked in this industry since a very long time and succeed early in your own deliveries. So that's disciplined agile for us. So what are we trying to address with this? So I think the first thing that we are looking at are false promises. So I'll tell you an instance that has happened with me personally. So in one of the meetings, the Scrum coach from the stakeholder side, he came to us and he said that the leadership is expecting the delivery to be done in a month from scratch, uh, which is like 1/3 of the time the development normally takes. Now, we were very confused because everybody knows how the system works. It was not a very new organization. It was mature enough when it came to RPA implementations. But this was a new expectation which came up. So we asked why? Why do you think that we will be able to do this in a month? And he said that it's because we have moved from a waterfall methodology to an agile methodology. And we are now expecting faster ship to market. Now, I'm not sure about you, but I've heard this a lot where an expectation is to be at least 4 times faster just because you are agile. Now, I would not say that is completely untrue, but it is probably true just for teams who are completely unstructured and are working on a simple implementation. Maybe they are able to achieve that fourfold growth. But I think most of the teams, and this is actual study which says this, so they would not probably see any improvement which is more than 7 to 12%. It would be even lesser where we are talking about implementation at a scale. So you would not even get that. It would probably be less than 10%. Now, another thing that we should talk about is the concept of a silver bullet. And this is again something which has been in discussions a lot, and a lot of companies have tried to do this. So if we talk about mythology, right? Unlike the werewolves, there is no silver bullet for software development. There is no shortcut, and there is no one prescribed methodology that will work all the time. So what we truly need are skilled people who aren't afraid to experiment and are continuously assessing and improving their strategies. There has to be a context in it, and they will have to act on that context. If not, they will most likely fail, or they will keep going in a loop where they are not really churning out any valuable work at the end of the iterations. Another problem is process popularity. Now, something that has worked well for others, it would work well for us too, right? That is what we have been hearing. That's Scrum. Now, when most of the people talk about Agile, they are almost always talking about Scrum. Scrum would have its own ceremonies, but unless it solves the problem at hand, it doesn't really help much, right? There is no point in blindly following a framework just because it's popular or just because it has been successful in a competitor's environment. You have your own problems, and you will have to choose your own frameworks. You will have to choose. You will have to tweak your own practices. Now, speaking about that, how does disciplined agile help you? So, disciplined agile, on the other hand, it is not prescribing any practices. It embraces the uniqueness that each team faces. Um, it has different life cycles, different goals and options that the team can potentially use, and they can succeed sooner because they already know what the trade-offs could be, and they can explore the things that they think would work better for them. Now, through guided continuous improvement and self-assessments, team can choose what works well for them. The end goal is overall agility, where the teams can still choose their ways of working while having an effective governance overall, and they can still integrate well with other departments. So that is our end goal when we talk about disciplined agile. And Scrum, to an extent, is a subset of it. And another thing is it doesn't really talk about just the construction phase, which is the development phase. It also talks about the entire ecosystem so that you can reduce the waste in the system and improve your decisions overall. So an overall organization wide agility is what we are trying to achieve through this framework. And again, we are saying the same thing. If you are a Scrum shop, you are very likely missing on a lot of things that the organization can use in order to succeed faster. So moving on. So let's come back, or let's back up a little and talk about the problems that we just discussed with RPA. The first one that we had was unclear expectations. Now, it is of utmost importance that we as a team understand what we are getting into, right? So if I talk about DA, which is disciplined agile, there is a goal known as align with enterprise direction. And this is something that I really like because it gives us that holistic approach to proceed with an implementation. So if you see this diagram here, and I'm not sure how visible this would be, um, this is basically your goal, and these are the strategies which come along with it. And then these are the options that DA provides to achieve those goals through the strategies. Now, there are a few options which are in bold. So for teams who are new to Agile, these are the prescribed starting points that they can use to just begin this process. Again, there are some lists which are ordered, which means that this is the preference in which, or this is the order in which we have seen this to succeed when we talk about a wider implementation. So this is just for you to know what this is. Now, talking about aligning with enterprise direction, what does that mean for us? So first of all, we need to ensure that we are doing the right thing. It's crucial to understand both the technical and the business strategies and follow appropriate methods to streamline our conversations. So we have to work in an enterprise aware manner so that everything gets aligned when we are fully digitized or when we have that digital transformation in an organization. And secondly, we have to ensure that we are taking advantage of everything available to us. Now, we don't really need to invest a lot of time uh, in recreating the wheel because that's a waste. So we have to understand what the existing assets are, what the capabilities are, what are our challenges, what are our limitations, so that we can leverage what we have, select what we need, and build a solution accordingly. So let's just consider a goal. With an RPA implementation, for example, there has to be a goal that the organization is trying to achieve. It could be saving cost, it could be compliance, maybe better productivity, or freeing up the workforce for something more valuable or to generate more business or create more value. Uh, it could be increasing the accuracy, maybe for tasks which are very data intensive and there is a high chance of human error coming in, and so on. Now, we need to know why we are doing this, why we are implementing RPA, so that the end goal would match with the initial expectation. Now, we also need some controls in this, like we have to have a standardized data source. We need a better business and IT collaboration, a better governance. And we need to set some quality conventions in place, and we need to define what our reporting needs are. So aligning with that overall direction will go a long way in getting a better implementation at the end of the cycle. Moving on, uh, second item that we talked about in the earlier slides was an inefficient selection, because we don't really know what processes to select or what to automate first. Now, coming back to DA, we talk about exploring the scope. So this has a lot more options than the previous one. I'll just talk about a few basic things. So stakeholders will have to be told at times what the platform is capable of. So they are going to have a lot of questions, and it is extremely important to get those questions answered because it will help to create a better collaborative environment. Um, they should understand what the end goal is, and they have to assess whether their requirement is getting addressed by that end goal. So this becomes a very important step in the overall selection process. Now, having said that, the clarity is very crucial, but we also need to understand or accept that everything cannot be known upfront. We have to prioritize the requirements accordingly, and we have to keep the framework flexible for any future enhancements that might come in. So knowing the initial scope, yes, it's very important because we have to have a starting point, but we need to be flexible enough so that tomorrow, if anything changes, or the stakeholder or we as a team evolve and learn something new, we are able to build that into the solution, or we are able to pivot from what we have as of today. Um, we need reasonable delivery expectation. That is a given, because we do need a roadmap when we talk about RPA. We need short-term goals, we need long-term goals, and all teams should have an agreement around what is a reasonable scope for the current effort, and we have to have a common vision for that. Now, for example, if we talk about this diagram on this side, one thing that is key for me is exploring the purpose, why we are doing this. And one option is outcomes. Now, if you go ahead and explore this option, it's a very nice thing because there is a positive side to it. It gives an insight, it gives us an insight into what the stakeholder would like to achieve, but it still keeps the path flexible, because at this stage we don't really know how to do it. We just have to understand what needs to be done. We can build that further by using other things like personas, or we can create user stories, we can create those experiences, we can go into the application and understand this in a little more detail. We can even group the stories together and create epics out of it. That is also an option which is provided, and overall we can get a better clarity out of it. Now, everything then can be put in form of flowcharts or process diagrams to understand handoffs or responsibilities or delays and other critical information. And this way, exploring the scope can work in a more effective manner, because we are very structured in the way we are approaching this problem. So the stakeholders know what they can expect at the end of it, and we know what we have to build while keeping everything in mind, along with the uncertainties that come with it. Next off, we had insufficient collaboration that almost always happens in the implementation phases, because there is always a disconnect which is there between the teams, since everybody is spread across the globe most of the times. So exploring this, let's say we want to explore the goal, coordinating the activities. So we have to support effective collaboration, and we have to find ways to do that. It is rare for us to be completely autonomous, because we have to rely on the expertise of others. We will need those inputs in order to be more effective. So in order to not have several sources of waste at the end of it, particularly wait times and rework, it's crucial that we support an effective collaboration between the team. But having said that, collaboration is important, yes, but teams also need to have an autonomy when it comes to the tasks that they're working on. So mastery and purpose is what usually inspires people, and that has to be managed along with a collaborative approach. So it has to be balanced with that. We need proper agreements within the team, across the team. We should know things like sharing the information. How do you do that? How do you showcase the work? How do you facilitate workshops with other teams? How frequently do you do this? How do you plan your deployments? How do you plan your releases? And I'm sure everybody has seen that, but a deployment without a holistic analysis of systems or people that it's going to affect, it could waste a lot of man hours by breaking down what's working. And that is a very crucial piece of information that we have to collect through this. And there are different ways to do this. We need to handle different situations according to what it is. So for example, for deployments, if we talk about that, we have to take an approach where we look ahead on what is going to come. We need to plan ahead for that. If you're talking about inter-team communications, a just-in-time approach could probably work, because it could probably not be that critical and could be resolved immediately. A status meeting would probably be an example of looking back on what was done and trying to get some insights out of it, trying to improve how the future implementations are done, or what precautions are going to be taken in future. So a combination of these three, which is looking ahead, just-in-time communications, and looking back, along with the wisdom to choose the right thing, that can actually define our success when we talk about coordinating these activities. Moving ahead, lack of documentation. So we need to improve the quality there. So a fundamental principle of Agile is to maintain a sustainable pace. So this enables us to swiftly react to changing customer or stakeholder needs. And for this, our assets need to be of a high quality so that they can easily evolve. Right? But I don't think fixing things all the times is the right way. We also need to understand why those things require a fixing in the first place. So we need to understand, for example, in this, uh, why does a technical debt exist in the first place? We need to prioritize the corrections that have to be made, as well as take appropriate steps so that others are also aware of why things are going wrong or what can be improved so that the same mistakes don't get repeated there. So improving the quality or reducing the technical debt plays an important part in making sure that the solutions that are churned out of RPA are enterprise ready or scalable or usable, that the different teams can actually just plug and play and reap the benefits out of it. And finally, I don't think everything can be planned or addressed immediately. We also have to be flexible enough and identify what are the things that we can live with for now, and then prioritize that accordingly and maybe put that later in the backlog to be assessed and addressed. Um, Finally, it has to be in a more enterprise aware manner. So we need to know what's happening at the enterprise level, and we have to be aligned with that. So in our case, the problem that we discussed was lack of documentation, and that happens with a lot of teams, that when we begin, we have things in place, but as we go along with all the changes and everything, it falls through the cracks. Now, to achieve just sufficient documentation in our case, the team needs to understand the implementation ecosystem, and they have to pay minute attention to the critical information that's going to drive your business. So it could probably be 20% of the data which is representing 80% of the system. We have to figure that out. We have to capture that. We have to keep updating that. And rest of the things which are not very frequent, that can be left to the team to update at a later stage, or that can be left to decide what needs to be done with it. It can even be evolved as you go along. So there has to be some guide rails so that a uniform direction is followed, and the information is easy to interpret when we talk about different teams who are working together. Another challenge that we face normally, and this is not just RPA, this is probably all deliveries, siloed implementations. So what do we do about that? So we have to be collaborated. We cannot be working in silos. That just is opposite of what or why Agile has come into play in the first place. So address changing stakeholder needs. That is the key thing that we will have to do. So, and it's very natural. Having said that, it's like opening up a Pandora's box. A lot of things will come out of it, and we would not really be able to address everything. And this is the biggest pain point that introduces a lot of delays, causes a lot of friction between the teams, and at times it results in a product which doesn't solve the purpose that it was originally taken up for. Now, a change which is coming from the stakeholders, it could be anything. It could be a new requirement. It could be a modification to something that is yet to be built, which is, I think, easier to handle. It could be something that we're doing right now in the current iteration. It could even be something that was built previously, it was delivered, but now it has to change. And to add to that complexity, it might not even be a requirement. It could be an issue. It could be an integration need. It could be a previous technical debt somewhere else that has to be addressed for our solution to work. Or it could even be an experiment so that we find better ways of doing things and we are more agile that way. So it has to be managed. We have to, and as Agile promotes, we need to focus less on what's agreed, and we need to focus more on what will create value for everybody. So we have to accept that the requirements are going to change. It will evolve as we learn about the ecosystem, as we learn about the entire process, things are going to evolve as well along with that. So being rigid or being too flexible, both is not good for the delivery. That's what my opinion is. Being rigid, it could result in a product which is not fit for use, and being too flexible at times, it could result in a product which is not built at all, because you kept getting changes and you kept implementing that. So a team which has an active collaboration, a common vision, and has set the guide rails or tolerance limits can deliver more effectively or more efficiently. There has to be a trust between the stakeholders and the delivery teams, and it has to be established. You have to work with them. You have to understand their pain points, and you have to suggest solutions that could work best for both of you. Now, there would also be there could also be trade-offs like accepting changes within an iteration. So this could actually enable the teams to respond immediately to the changes, but it may result that the team is working overtime because of that, because an item of similar value was not removed from the iteration. uh, a friend of mine once said, uh, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So that is what we need to focus on. We need to understand where to strike the balance, and we have to work with our stakeholders, and we have to make sure that we get a proper working consumable product at the end of it. Otherwise, it has no value for anybody. And finally, the spearhead, maintenance overhead. So what do we do about that? So let's talk about ensure production readiness. So we have to produce a consumable solution at the end of everything that we do. That's our end goal. So our goal here is to determine whether we can safely deploy our solution into production. This is important because it determines whether the technical feasibility or we are technically ready to ship the solution, and the stakeholders are actually prepared to receive and use the new functionality. There would be a lot of migration utilities that would work as is, but without proper preparations, it can actually turn into a disaster, which we do not want, obviously. So it is necessary to test the solution at every level, assess the deployment readiness for individual solution as well as for the overall overall ecosystem, and review the documentation. It's very important because the support teams, they are not really exposed to the new functionalities early on, though ideally they should be, because they will have to serve those customers, they will have to resolve those issues. But in absence of that, having those proper documentations in place, they can actually help in containing this situation to some extent. So again, balance here is the key. And once the solution gets deployed, we just hope we can sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor. So that's what our end goal is. So what is a consumable solution? It is usable, desirable, functional. It should align in terms of software and hardware. It should have proper documentation. It should follow a process. And then it should have an organization alignment. So all this contributes towards a successful delivery at the end. So I think coming to the last bit, so RPA digital transformation. So this is everything that we talked about. We have to be aware. We have to understand what needs to be done and what is the direction. We have to be ready. The roles and success criteria needs to be defined. We need to pick the right vendor. We have to think long term. We have to think of somebody who continuously evolves at the market as the market does for success. We have to prove our concept. So the RPA business case that we're talking about, we have to assess what the assumptions are, and we have to touch as many systems as possible for a good success rate there. We need to do a pilot. So for a smaller implementation, it should go live. The users should actually use it. And we should measure against the predefined success criteria. So unless that is achieved, there is something which is wrong in the system, and additional work should be probably put on hold until this is properly out of the way. Now, once the pilot is done and is successful, we have to establish proper standards, we have to have some governance around it, and we have to plan for adoption across the organizations. We have to expand what we are doing right now. We have to communicate success stories, and we have to transform. That is our end goal. So digital transformation is what we are targeting. So automation that becomes embedded as part of work life, that constitutes as a digital transformation. And we can then let the human workforce do what they do best, which is adding value. So I think with that, I am done with the view of what the challenges are and how can we do this a little better. So before we go ahead, I'll just talk about ProThoughts. So ProThoughts is where I learned about disciplined agile, and they are very knowledgeable in terms of why something is done and what needs to happen in the right way. So they do have these trainings which are corporate learning. They have online trainings, they have e-learnings and classroom trainings as well. And this is just a representation of that. Um, there are different ways in which it's provided. They even do corporate trainings and they even do consulting services if you have to take that in order to enable your organizations to do better. And this is a list of certifications that they are offering right now. I do recommend disciplined agile, at least if you're working in an agile fashion in your company, and there is a lot to be learned from that. So I think with that, I am done with my part. Um, we can take any questions if there are, and I can then share the PDU code on the chat, and you can just take that up and claim that for one PDU. Let me just paste that code first before people start to drop off. And this is the contact information. I'm sorry about that. I did not project this before. So you can get in touch with ProThoughts at info@prothoughts.co.in, or you can call them at this number, which is listed on screen, 8422907604. Thanks a lot.